Hey, it's Dominic Ajakovic, and you're watching Light the Fuse Wrestling Podcast.
Hello, everybody. My name is MTG, and I want to welcome you to Light the Fuse Wrestling Podcast, the only pro wrestling podcast that you should be listening to. We do our Raw reviews, our Wednesday Night Dynamite reviews, our Friday Night SmackDown reviews, and any pay-per-views that we can add on into it. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Monday Night Raw episode 1417. This was taped earlier yesterday, and it aired the same day on July 20th, 2020 on the USA Network. Raw emanated yet again from WWE's training facility, the WWE Performance Center. And this was taped for this episode's of Raw, and next week's episode of Raw was taped yesterday on July 20th of 2020. And it will air next week. When we started off, Raw opened with a video package of Seth Rollins beating Rey Mysterio in their eye for an eye match. The Raw opening video then aired. The broadcast team of Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton, and Samoa Joe checked in and hyped up the unsanctioned match that was also scheduled for later on in the night, ergo being Big Show versus the supposed legend killer, Randy Orton. Seth Rollins then made his entrance, and he was accompanied to the ring by his protege, Murphy. The broadcast team then said the expectation is that Rey Mysterio will be able to maintain his vision and make a full recovery. Some of the masked spectators then, they chanted for Rey briefly, and then Rollins said that it was referred to as a globe luxation. He then said that it means that Rey Mysterio's eye came out of its socket. Rollins then said that he knew the stipulation of the match, but what happened will stay with him for the rest of his life. Rollins then said that the image of Mysterio holding his own bloody eye in his hand will stay with him forever, as like we saw at Extreme Rules where he threw up. Rollins then exclaimed that it was disgusting, violent, and barbaric. He then said that it was more than he was expecting and it made him sick to his stomach, ergo the vomiting. Seth Rollins then said he's been asked whether he regrets what happened. Rollins then said that he needed to answer the question with a question, and I quote, "Do you regret what you have done to me?" Rollins then asked the fans that, relieving with a resounding boo. Rollins then said the fans made the Monday Night Messiah. He then said that the fans made him the monster that he had become. Rollins then also recalled that Mysterio was the person who selected the stipulation. And I quote, "Actions have consequences," stated from Rollins. And I quote again, "What happened to Rey Mysterio last night was ugly, and it was unfortunate, but cannot afford to dwell in the past." Rollins said to Mysterio is out of sight. He said that no one is left out to stand for the greater good. And by that time, Aleister Black done made his presence very much known. Aleister made his entrance and spoke from the stage, and I quote, "Don't you dare deflect any of this blame but on yourself." Black then said that it's all on Seth's hands, but he was there to rectify all of it. Murphy then ran to the stage and got hit right in the back with a kick from Aleister Black, who then headed to the ring. Murphy then followed and pulled Black right out of the ring. Black then worked over Murphy alongside and then tossed him over the broadcast table. Aleister Black then tried to enter the ring, which caused Rollins to exit on the other side, ergo. I'd like to forget that the eye for an eye match had ever happened, but hopefully WWE's creative is on the same mode, and they'll move away from this until Mysterio returns. If he ever does return, the fact that he's still not under contract. And on a side note, the masked spectator wrestlers that were there for the crowd were more vocal than ever during this promo. And in addition, for the casual chanting, they were actually one more than wrestling shouting things in response to Rollins' promo. I felt as though we had a little bit of a kind of an audience feel to it instead of just paid stand-ins. And then, they would cut to commercial break. They would come back. We'd have Seth Rollins with Murphy versus Aleister Black. The match was joined in the progress with Rollins on the offense. A graphic listed showed the Street Profits versus Angel Garza and Andrade for later on the show. Later, Black then avoided a stomp and then hit Rollins with a Black Mask kick. Murphy then ran in and was hit by his own Black Mask. Black then reached for Rollins, who then rolled to the ringside. Aleister Black then hit Murphy with a Black Mass kick and going into another commercial break. Rollins then avoided another Black Mass coming out of the break, and then he put Black down with a pair of super kicks. Rollins then called for his friend Buddy Murphy, who was selling against the broadcast table. Then Rollins went up to the top, but cut Black shortly off, Rollins then ended up pulling a right arm of Black right over the top rope. Rollins then went for a move from the top rope, and that saw Black avoid. Black then hit Rollins with a kick right to the back of the head. Seth Rollins then wrenched on Aleister Black's bad arm, performed a stomp to score the win. The match was alright. It lasted about 11 minutes, 30 seconds, and Rollins and Murphy were leaving when they stomped on the stage. Rollins then pointed back to the ring, and Murphy, as the disciple, ran to the ring and attacked Black. Seth Rollins returned and joined in on the beatdown. The duo tossed Black around the ringside area, rammed him into the barricades about 2 or 3 times. Rollins then wrapped Murphy's arm around the ring post and started casing and then slammed it. Rollins then wrenched on the bad arm of Black again. Aleister Black then sold on the mat while Rollins asked when enough was enough. Rollins then tried to slam Black's hand onto the broadcast table repeatedly. Rollins yelled at the spectator wrestlers while they asked if they wanted him to do this. Buddy Murphy then sat on the back of Aleister Black. Rollins then asked Aleister Black where his friends were to save him when there was obviously no one coming to save him. It was obviously a good television match, Black was made to look as competitive as always, but it's still disappointing to see him playing a role of a Mysterio admirer rather than his dark, bestowing character that he so much just stands up and you can tell. That's his aura, And even sillier that Rollins pointed out by openly asking questions of why his friends aren't there saving him. By the way, whatever happened to Austin Theory? That's a very good question. I thought it was something to do with COVID or something, but he just magically just popped off a stage. No more on Raw or nothing. And then we cut to a backstage segment with Ron Simmons told MVP and Bobby Lashley that there's a better way to do things. Ron Simmons then left. Lashley then told MVP they'd talk more about it. And MVP called in R-Truth, who said Apollo Crews is the real champion. When MVP made the claim that Truth winked at him, Lashley then mentioned something about a new 24/7 champion. Bobby Lashley would bring a ref in, and as soon as Truth would try to leave, while holding his frying pan, nonetheless, he got hit by Shelton Benjamin for the 3 count, and they cut to a new champion. And then MVP would ask Shelton Benjamin, since you're the champion, would you like to join us? And of course they did, and that would close to commercial. They then hyped up NXT for having a huge announcement from William Regal. But will he be in the audience? Will he be there at Full Sail, or could we see him just do another Zoom call? Either way, it's always good to see the NXT general manager because he means business. Bobby Lashley, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin then made their entrances. MVP then boasted that he is the new United States champion, and he didn't even break a sweat. He claimed that Lashley's ragdolled Apollo Crews so badly that he decided to stay home. MVP then said that once he gets finished beating up the Dumb and Dumber team, ergo Ricochet and Cedric Alexander, then he would have an after party after they celebrate with their championships. Ricochet and Alexander would then come out. Ricochet then pointed out that Dumb and Dumber line was funny in 2006, just not now. Ricochet and Alexander then said that they would become the champions again without MVP's help. MVP then told Ricochet and Alexander to pick any 2 of them to face, and they'd be great, but Ricochet was like, well, why we need to pick 2? We have a partner with the returning Mustafa Ali. And of course he would make his unforgettable return, proving that he is not the SmackDown hacker, because that storyline just got thrown in the trash, And for those keeping score at home, Dumb and Dumber was actually released in 1994. It was still hilarious, but let's see, 6, 12 plus 2. You are 14 years behind, man. Very, very much behind. Oh well, it happens. And then when we come back from break, we have Bobby Lashley, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin versus Ricochet, Alexander, and Ali. Phillips referred to MVP as, and I quote, the man calling himself the U.S. champion. Then the babyface trio was on an offense heading into another commercial break. We have entered the second hour of Monday Night Raw, and the heel trio has isolated Ricochet. Ali then took a hot tag and worked over MVP, and Bobby Lashley would break up a pin and was cleared to the ringside. Lashley then caught Ricochet and Alexander by the throat when they both dove right onto him, but Ricochet knocked him over and over the broadcast table. Back in the ring, Mustafa Ali put MVP down with a neck breaker and then hit him with a 450 for the win. The winners were Mustafa Ali, Ricochet, and Alexander versus Bobby, MVP, and Benjamin, and it went straight for 15 minutes. So it was a nice return for Ali, but I hate to say it, but I hope he's not lumped together with Ricochet and Alexander going forward. Both men are talented, all of them are talented, but they're not being pushed, and I don't really see this changing in the near future. I hope my logic is wrong, because I feel as though all three of them have something, to bring to the table. I feel as though that they need to bring in something that's awesome and nice, but with the current pandemic era, it's hard to do longevity of the storylines, and I understand that. Then they cut to Randy Orton. He stood backstage and asked the viewers at home if they ever thought of the moment that changed their life. Orton recalled joining Evolution, facing Mick Foley, becoming the youngest world champion in history, but he said all those were not the moments that we're referencing to. Rather than he said the moment is that the one he sees whenever he shuts his eyes. Orton then said it was 175 days ago that he slammed his chair down on the surgically repaired neck of Edge. Orton then said his friendship with Edge, Christian, and Big Show are done. He said they all helped save him from himself in the past. Orton then said one moment brought so much pain to so many people. He said that moment brought him satisfaction. So the more pain that Orton can get, the more satisfaction he can dwell. Orton then said it felt so good to stand over the convulsing body of a man who paved the way for so many in that WWE locker room. And to do it again when he ended his career at Backlash. Orton then boasted of ruining Christian's chance at one last match, and that he would take the pleasure in ending the lifelong career of Big Show later on in the night. We would cut back from commercial, and Ron Simmons was shown talking with the Viking Raiders while the Raw theme played. The broadcast team then spoke about an unsanctioned match, yet again. Phillips noted that the company couldn't be held liable for this, ergo as what AEW did back at Fyter Fest 2019. And it's hilarious that WWE's sanctioned match, where the goal is to pluck a man's eye out of his head, but the storyline is that we are not sanctioning Orton versus Show 24 hours later. I agree, I find this hilarious that you would sanction a match where you'd pull a man's eye out, but not sanction a match between two veterans that is basically just an Extreme Rules match. Christian was interviewed by the broadcast team from his home via Zoom. Samoa Joe then asked Christian how he's been since Orton had punted him. Christian said that he knew he was going to get himself into, but he didn't expect to see what would happen in the terms of Orton weaponizing Ric Flair, Christian then said that he'll never look at Orton and Flair in the same way again. He said that he didn't know if he would ever be the same, because he gave him a pretty nasty punt. I will not argue. It looked very nasty. Samoa Joe then asked Christian to expand on his health and asked if Big Show is walking into an Orton trap. Christian then said that he doesn't feel good. Christian said he'd like to be doing it again if he could guarantee that Orton would be able to get, but he's coming to get him. Christian then said he can't wait to watch Big Show knock Orton right ass on his ass. A strong segment from Christian, who found the perfect somber mixed eventual tone for his delivery of this promo. I feel as though that if Christian would bounce back from this, he would be back for one more match, just one more match, and just take out Orton. Just pummel him. We would cut back, and Bianca Belair spoke with Sarah Schreiber on an interview set. Belair was asked what fans can expect for her going forward. Bianca Belair then delivered some EST lines, because, she is the EST of WWE. Peyton Royce then showed up and dismembered Schreiber. She told her to vamoose and all that. Royce then took the issue with Bianca Belair teaming with Ruby Riott, who the team entered the picture. Belair wondered where Billie Kay ran off to and said that she hopes she gets what she's coming to when she describes as iconic. We would cut to another commercial break, and we would get Ruby Riott versus Peyton Royce. Tom Phillips said that Billie Kay couldn't be there because of Royce said she was dealing with other businesses. Peyton Royce then tried to pin Riot while holding on to the ropes, but the referee caught her. A short time later, Riot then avoided the top rope from Royce and then hit her with that Riot kick to score the pin. It lasted about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Ruby Riott came out the victor. And I guess we can add Billie Kay to the MIA list along with Liv Morgan, who is also expected to be involved in this feud, but, they're just missing. Charlie Caruso then asked Andrade, Garza, and Vega about how they can get on the same page for their match with the Street Profits. Vega then stopped Garza from responding and addressed it for herself. Andrade and Garza got to speak, but they were attacked by the Street Profits. Phillips then said their match was up next, as the Street Profits attacked them going into the break. They would come back, and we got Raw Tag Teams Champion Street Profits, Montez Ford, Angelo Dawkins versus Andrade and Angel Garza with Zelina Vega, and this match was non-title. Ford then took a tag early and showed off his athleticism by leaping over Andrade not once but twice, and then drop-kicking him. Ford then performed a flip dive onto Andrade, heading yet into another commercial break. Late in the match, Andrade then avoided a double team move and had Garza blasted Dawkins with a super kick. Garza then tried to superplex Montez Ford, who then stuffed it and then punched him off the ropes. Montez Ford then followed up with a big frog splash to score the pin. The Street Profits defeated Andrade and Garza in about 11 minutes in this non-title match. It was good to see the Profits return from an unceremonial MIA list. Ford, who then grew his hair out just a little bit, showed off some good fire and may have set a new record for how high in the air he got with his frog splash, because these things are getting right there at Eddie Guerrero level, and I was surprised to see the champs go over, since I figured Andrade and Garza were next in line for a title shot. But not complaints, since WWE has gone way overboard by having their secondary and tag champions lose non-title matches on television. We would cut backstage to Andrade and Garza were chatting with Vega, who showed up and barking at him. She said it was their chance to establish dominance in the tag division. She then said their arguments are stupid. She said it was hard to make out, but it seems like Garza said that they were on the same page. Vega then told him to prove it. Sasha Banks and Bayley would then come make their entrances now. Banks showed off the Raw Women's Championship. Banks then said that she had a lot of people she had been accusing her of stealing the title. Banks then claimed that she fought for the championship unlike her opponent, who was handed the same title by Becky Lynch. Banks then recalled spraying the mist into the face of the referee so that she couldn't continue. She just said that Bayley just borrowed it, just borrowed the referee's shirt in order for her to get the gold. And it turned out to be something weird, We entered the third hour, and then Asuka's music played, and she walked right there onto the stage with her best friend Kairi Sane, who, unbeknownst to me, according to these wrestling news, this was her final Monday Night Raw appearance, her final WWE appearance. She is supposedly heading back to Japan to be with her husband. So we say, Asuka said that she was not ready for the Thief. Asuka then said the title belongs to hers, and then Banks told her to come and get it. And as soon as she heard that, Asuka started jetting towards the ring. And as she did that, Stephanie McMahon appeared on the big screen. She congratulated Banks and Bayley for being the tag team champions and Bayley for being the SmackDown champion. However, she said Banks versus Asuka was indeed a horror show, and it wasn't just that match. It was the pay-per-view too, don't get me wrong. She said Banks did not win the match, but neither did Asuka. Stephanie then announced that Asuka versus Sasha Banks will be next week, and she said that it will be for the Raw Women's Championship, but the title can be lost by pin, submission, DQ, countout, etc. While playing up to the possibility of Bayley interfering, the Kabuki Warriors would hit the ring for yet another commercial break. I predict that we would see at least one McMahon family member appear on television because that's typical WWE response to slumping ratings. You throw a McMahon in there. With that being said, I don't really count this because this was an unadvertised appearance and Stephanie didn't even appear in person. I guess the U.S. Championship is so meaningless that it didn't even care enough to address whether MVP is the actual champion. So that shows that WWE is just not really caring about the United States title. But get what you take. Now we have Bayley versus Kairi Sane in a non-title match. This match was joined in progress. Sane then performed an early hip attack on Bayley, and a short time later, Sane then had Bayley hugged up in the ropes, and when she double stomped on her right off the top rope, Kairi Sane then went for a pin, but then Bayley pulled Banks right out to the ringside. And then we went to another commercial break. When we come back, Shayna Baszler was shown watching the match on a backstage monitor sideways, because that's apparently how you watch it. She was then approached by Charlie Caruso, who was glad to be back since her COVID-19 stuff, who then asked if she had a vested interest. She then said that she didn't have a match and questioned whether she was supposed to sit in catering or go out and cheer like a fan. She said that she has a vested interest in this match, and the same way a shark has a vested interest in its prey in the water. I felt as though that was pretty neat. Bayley then caught Sane with a knee from the head. Bayley then performed a Bayley to back suplex, and then went up and performed her own top rope elbow. Bayley then set up for the pin, but Sane, of course, kicked out. Bayley then acted shocked. Bayley then picked up Kairi Sane for the Bayley to belly, but Kane countered and then got an upset win at 15 minutes and 30 seconds. You didn't really think that they could resist having a champion lose in both the non-title matches, did you? With that being said, this was a highly entertaining match. It was nice to see Kairi Sane getting a meaningful win, and it's just too bad to see she reportedly has her foot out the door. The Baszler promo was a little wordy again, but it's still very well delivered, and I suspect we can see the person who took out Sane and then challenged Asuka at SummerSlam. Drew McIntyre was shown walking backstage, and Sarah Schreiber then approached him and asked him what kind of condition he was in following his brutal match with Dolph Ziggler last night at the horror show known as Extreme Rules. McIntyre said he felt like he fell down several flights of stairs, but he is still your WWE champion, and that's all that mattered. As he headed to the ring to address his future, we went to another commercial break. Seth Rollins and Shayna Baszler and Mustafa Ali were then advertised for the following Raw talk immediately following Raw. WWE Champion Drew McIntyre made his entrance, and once in the ring, McIntyre said that he had handed it to Dolph Ziggler because the stipulation he came up with was brilliant and swayed more on Ziggler's favor in the match, but it was still Drew McIntyre who came out the victor. Dolph Ziggler would then come out and ask for another title match. Drew McIntyre was just like, dude, you picked the stipulation. No, this is not happening. And then Ziggler tried to spin McIntyre around, but he gave him a Glasgow Kiss headbutt, and which left the ring. Dolph Ziggler then tried one more time and said, I'll even let you pick the stipulation. McIntyre said, well, if I pick the stipulation, sure, why not? How's about a challenger never has his entrance music played again? You know, that'll be a good match, you know. Loser would just have to walk out to nothing. Big Show then delivered a backstage promo. He recalled Orton attacking his friends, and he said he's lashing out at everyone. Big Show then said that all the people who tried to lift him out of the dark hole are now being systematically and satisfactorily taken out. Show then said he knows his career and health are in jeopardy, but he just prayed for the long time that the Legend Killer would never show his face again. Show then recalled riding with Orton, and their nicknames were called the Hammer and the Chisel. He also said that they are bonded together over the complexities of how they were presented in the business. Show then said tigers can't change their stripes. He said that it's trying to deal with the weight of being the world's largest athlete, and for Orton it just has to be a third-generation superstar. Show then said they became friends because they knew of what they were both dealing with at the time, you know. And it was an excellent promo by the Big Show, as it's one for super talented person who is responsible for Edge, Orton, Christian, and Big Show's promos, yet isn't working on anything else in creative. Tom Phillips then hyped the Asuka vs. Bank match for the following week. Saxton then emphasized that the title can change hands via pinfall, submission, disqualification, countout, just in case anyone interferes. And then the final match of the night was Randy Orton versus Big Show in a non-sanctioned fight. Big Show was the early aggressor with some body shots and punches and chops right to Orton's chest. Tom Phillips then played up the show and was also targeting the shoulder and the collarbone that Orton had issues with over the last couple years. Big Show then speared Randy Orton, who then rolled to the ringside. Big Show followed to the floor and pulled a table out from underneath the ring. By that time, Angel Garza and Andrade ran out and attacked the Big Show while Zelina Vega applauded from the top of the stage. The duo then ran Show into the ring post, which held him in place for Orton. Before Orton delivered the punt kick, the Viking Raiders ran out and fought Andrade and Garza. The tag teams were going and coming out for the break. Phillips then announced that McIntyre vs. Ziggler match would take place on next week's show, with McIntyre choosing the stipulation. So we would be getting McIntyre vs. Dolph for the WWE title. But what is McIntyre going to pick? I want a cage. I really do. Show then covered Orton for a near fall. Show teased the knockout punch, but Orton ducked right out of the ring to avoid it. Show then set up the table in the ring and then reached over and pulled Orton to the floor and tossed him right into the ring. Show then placed Orton on the table. Show then went for a Vader bomb, but Orton moved and Show crashed through the table. Orton then smirked and leaned against the ropes. Orton then waited for Joe to stand up and dropped him with one of the biggest RKOs I have probably ever seen. Orton then got the pin, and it was just clean. It was one of the cleanest things I've seen besides the mid-match assault from Andrade and Garza. Orton defeated him at 13 minutes and 45 seconds, but after the match, Orton backed into the corner while Show got to his knees. Orton delivered a punt kick right to the head of Big Show. Orton knelt right over him and said, and I quote, "I told you, just like the others. One more legend. Dead." The spectator wrestlers then booed, then Orton's music played and he stood on the ropes as the show ended. It was a pretty straightforward main event with the expected finish and a post-match punt kick. We could have expected that from Orton at any time. WWE did a nice job of building up this match in advance, even though the show ended with good promos for both men. With the build to the match and with both of them being the night after a pay-per-view, it'll be interesting to see if the results have some improvement from the Raw and the ratings tomorrow. And on that side note, it was good to see WWE did the right thing by not having Ric Flair involved in this show. Flair told the New York Post that his wife tested positive for COVID. So he disputed a Post source that he claimed that Flair, who possibly has the virus, there's no way that Flair should be allowed nowhere near or enter the WWE Performance Center. Here's wishing his wife Wendy the very best. And overall, it was a solid episode of Raw. But let me know your thoughts of the show. You know, you can follow me on Anchor.fm. You can see this on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at ThisIsMTG. You can follow me on Instagram at ThisIsMTG. You can go on Facebook, go to facebook.com/LTFWrestling. You can go on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Comment. I will try to answer as much as I can. YouTube.com/MTG Network. And just keep this with everybody. Try to share it. You got to remember, light the fuse, bring the boom. I am your host, MTG. This is Light the Fuse Wrestling Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Anchor.fm, Google Podcast, anywhere you get your podcast. All right, y'all have a great day.